and welcome to the Living Confidently with Sight Loss podcast. This is where we share the real experiences, practical advice, and positive conversations about living independently and confidently with sight impairment. I'm Mike, and thank you very much for joining me. Now, today's episode is about two very but powerful small words: yes and no. Because sometimes saying yes to something new, even something small, can completely change your confidence, your outlook, and even your life. And when you're living with sight loss, it can be very easy to start saying no instead. No to invitations, no to trying new things, no to going out, and no to opportunities. Not because you want to, but because fear, uncertainty, or lack of confidence can quietly creep in. So today, we're talking about the power of saying yes. Now, let's be honest, when sight loss becomes part of your life, confidence can take a knock. Things that once felt simple suddenly feel uncertain. You might begin wondering, will I manage? What if I struggle? What if I embarrass myself? What if I become a burden? And slowly, even without realising it, the world that you live in can start becoming smaller. Not overnight, but bit by bit. You stop going to certain places. You avoid unfamiliar situations. You turn down invitations. And while that might feel safer in the short term, over time, it can lead to isolation, frustration, and loss of confidence. Now, the interesting thing is, I think, the very first yes is usually the hardest one. It's that first trip out. It's that first social group. That first journey alone. That first new experience after sight loss. And often, before you do it, your mind convinces you it will go terribly wrong. But for many times, it doesn't. In fact, people often come away saying, that wasn't as bad as I expected. I actually enjoyed that. I'll do that again. Confidence doesn't magically appear beforehand. It grows afterwards. And we've seen some brilliant examples of this recently. If you think back a couple of weeks ago, take David Rutherford, for example, who is sight impaired and recently took on the SkyWalk at Blackpool Tower. Now, standing on a glass floor high above the promenade isn't exactly everyone's idea of relaxation. It certainly isn't mine. But David said yes to that experience. And what followed was a fantastic day filled with confidence, achievement, and adventure. And if you remember Maureen, who also suggested something special, she went to a theatre trip to see Mamma Mia live on stage. She was there singing along, enjoying the atmosphere, soaking up every moment. Again, that joy only happened because she gave herself permission to say yes to the experience. And those examples don't have to be huge, dramatic moments either. Sometimes saying yes simply means going for a coffee, attending a support group, trying a new hobby, taking a short journey maybe, or even meeting new people. Small yeses can lead to big changes. Now, this bit is important. Saying yes doesn't mean that you're fearless. Most people still feel nervous about doing something. The difference is simply that they choose to try it anyway. And honestly, bravery often looks very ordinary. So it's someone quietly deciding, I'm going to give this a go. Even if they're anxious, even if they're unsure, it's that confidence in action. And this is what actually happens when you start to begin to say yes more often. Because things start to change. You begin proving to yourself that you are capable of doing something. You gain the experience. You learn how to adapt. And you become more comfortable in situations that once felt difficult. And perhaps most importantly, your world becomes bigger again. Not because sight loss disappears, but because the confidence starts returning. Now, you don't have to say yes to absolutely everything. And it doesn't mean throwing yourself into overwhelming situations. Just start small. Maybe the yes that you say this week is making a phone call. It could be going somewhere familiar independently. We spoke last week about travel. It could be going out and making that bus journey that you wouldn't normally make. It's joining an activity group. It's speaking to someone new. You could in theory do all them in one go. You could make a phone call to Envision, say, for example. You're going somewhere familiar, so if you've been here before, you know where you're going. But if you come here on a bus, say, for example, instead of getting a lift, getting a taxi, possibly, if that's possible, you're joining an activity, so it could be that you come along to the next craft and chat group, say, for example, or the Thursday social centre, and you can speak to someone new. Now, doing all that might be a bit too much, but if you do it slowly, step by step, just do one thing at a time, confidence will start to grow slowly. And, I'll be honest, not every experience will go perfectly. Sometimes plans change. Sometimes things are frustrating and the confidence dips again. But one difficult experience doesn't erase progress. The important thing is to continue to give yourself opportunities, because growth rarely happens inside your comfort zone. So, as we finish today, here's something to think about. What's the one thing that you've been saying no to because of fear or uncertainty? And what might happen if you gave yourself permission to say yes instead? Because it's not easy, but because you deserve experiences, opportunities, connection, and enjoyment just like everybody else. Sight loss may change how you do things, but it doesn't mean that life stops. So if you do something for me this week, please just say yes to just one thing, and just see what impact that has on your life. Thank you very much for listening to Living Confidently with Sight Loss with me, Mike. And if you'd like to contact Envision about anything, maybe joining a group, the number to ring is 01253 362696. That's 01253 362696. And don't forget, Talking Envision is available on YouTube. The Bite Size is available on Spotify and all good podcast servers. And you can always ask Alexa to open Talking Envision to hear the full Talking Envision. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye for now.